work, and I'm telling you, this book is a life changer. I just loaned it to a young man who I'm mentoring, and he brought it back last night, and he was just shouting about how good it was and how much he enjoyed it. You know that I've been talking a lot about the political unrest that's going on internationally and what's going on all over the world. And a book I just discovered recently, and I've talked about it on the show before, is something I highly recommend that you pick up for yourself. Vincent Bevins wrote this book. It's called The Jakarta Method. The Jakarta Method is recently declassified CIA documents and materials that have actually laid out exactly the plan of the United States to dominate the world. I'm sorry to tell you, but it's a true story. 35 million Muslims have been killed since 1947. And this book outlines how it happened. They did a cut and paste. They even called it the Jakarta Method. They started out in Jakarta, killed 1 million people without firing a shot. That's propaganda. Just wanted to throw this out there at you. And you know, if you're interested in finding out a little bit more about American history and a part of history you never knew about, this is an eye-opener. Guys, as you know, the motto on my show is everyone's looking for a hero, and if you can't find one, be one. And I'm truly fortunate and blessed today to have a guest who is a hero, a person who found themselves on the downside of life and actually was able to pull themselves up and found some other powers and energies and other resources that were able to give her a very clear understanding and path for her life. And she's actually written 4 books now, and the book we're going to be talking about is Love Search. Polly Ann, thank you so much for visiting us.
Thank you.
Polly Ann Sanders Peterson, excuse me. And so, Polly, thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you for having me this morning, Paul. It's an honor, and I love the new studio.
Yes, it's wonderful. Oh, yes.
Beautiful.
Yes, shout out to Henry Archuleta and KUHS, man. This is exciting, guys.
Yes.
Oh, before I forget, guys, we are actively looking for sponsors for the show.
Yes.
If you have a restaurant, if you have a small business, I don't care if it's local or if it's international, as you know, our cameras go out and our feed goes out to the entire world. Reach out to us, because we would love to have you as a sponsor on our show. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started with our interview.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Polly, this is your autobiography.
It is.
Your memoirs.
It is.
Okay,
Yes,
fantastic. Is this your most recent book?
It is not. It's actually my first book.
Okay.
So when I wrote that in 2008, I wrote it because I wanted everyone to know that it's possible to find love and acceptance.
I so agree.
Yeah.
And when you first wrote this book, did you intend to write a book, or did it start as journaling, or did it really start out as a book?
Well, I knew I was to write a book, Paul. It was in my heart. But I'm a salon owner, and I'm an active hairdresser. So I'm fortunate to have a wonderful clientele to serve. And so I knew it was in my heart, Paul, to write it, but there was no rush. And so I was so busy. I'm a highly tasked person. So I was so busy with all of my other tasks that I just kept it in my heart. And then I was in Bible college. And so that's how the desire came to me to write the book. I even knew the name of it. And so, but I just left it there because I thought, well, there's no rush on it, and I'm trying to do this, and this, a high task person. So one day it came in my heart that I was to produce a conference for people, for authors. And I was like, well, that's fine, God, but I don't know anything about a book. I've never written a book. I don't know a thing about a book. I don't know about publishers, editors, or nothing. So my assignment was to put on a conference in Denver for writers. When I researched that, I became knowledgeable, and I began to write my book. Actually, I wrote that book in 9 months. Because once I put it to structure, this is for people out there that want to write a book. Here's how you do it. One, if you know it's in your heart to write a book, you have to become structured. You have to do a 1, 2, 3 plan. Otherwise, you'll just be doing it amiss, right, Paul?
That's right.
So I actually put it to a plan. So actually what I did was I just said, okay, I'm going to write 3 days a week. I knew the name of it. I was praying about who it's for. That's very important. Who's the book for? And then as I was doing that, I began to write the book. And then I realized there's a few pieces I'm missing, like an editor. Because an editor's job is to take your writings, your manuscript, and make it flow for you. So then I had to believe for an editor. An editor came into my path, and I hired her, and editors are really expensive. The most expensive thing about doing a self-publishing book is your editor, not your marketing, not the publisher, but the editing, unless you're capable of doing editing. So did you do your own editing?
Oh my goodness, I'm so interesting that you mentioned that. I went through 5 editors.
Okay.
I finally got my nephew, Mitchell McConnell. Shout out to Mitchell. He was a DePaul University graduate, had already edited 2 novels. And so when I finally found Mitchell and he came and sat with me and started doing the editing, he was exactly what I needed. He was able to convey my message, and so yes, that was a real difficult time.
Yes, so really finding yourself the right editor, because I have faith. Of course, I believe in praying for it. So God did bring me a good editor, and the editor of my first book actually is the same editor that did my last book, my workbook. Okay, so my first book, Love Search, is a story about how I found love, acceptance, how I overcame severe rejection and severe anger. My counselor told me when she met me, Polly, you have more hidden anger than anyone I know. I was like, right, I can show you some people with anger. You see this smile, Paul? I was like, there's no way. But what I had was really hidden anger, that deep hidden anger, the one that wanted to kill.
You know, Polly, I could so relate to that. I had an experience recently where I discovered that I had a lifelong rage. I remember people telling me I was an angry young man when I was a young man, and I remember having a lot of animosity towards a lot of different things. And I didn't even know it. Like you, it was hidden deep in me.
Right.
And so for me to be able to overcome that has been such a liberating addition to my life. I mean, it really is an addition. I mean, it did take something from me, you know, realizing that, but it also gave me a peace that I never knew before.
Exactly. When she told me that, God showed me 3 different people in my life, just put them in my path. And because I'm a hairdresser, because I'm into looks, anger will really not only make you sick, but it'll weigh you down. It was like I was carrying 100 pounds more of weight with all that anger. I was very suppressed. And even though I had this smile on my face, in my heart, I was so unhappy. That's where it was hidden at. It was in here. From all of the hard things that had happened to me in my past. So consequently, I began to really deal with God, and I was angry the most at God himself. Because I was saying, God, if you're really loving, why did you let this happen to me? And so I think that's the question of everybody out there. When you're really angry, you're saying, you know, why did this have to happen to me? Why did I have to go through this? Why did I have to lose this? Especially if you lost a mate or a child. It's 2 of the most difficult things to do. But mine had to do with not only losing my parents. My father died, Paul, when I was 12. And he was 65 when I was born. And so he was the big caregiver in our family. And then my mother had severe mental illness. And so I stayed at home out of the 12 kids. Only 4 of us was left at home, and the other children had made their way outside of the home. So I was still there as the caregiver and the caretaker. And so when Dad died, it left me and 3 other brothers at home. So my older brother took those 3 brothers in Arkansas, where I'm from, and my sister in Denver brought me to Denver. So that's how I got to Denver, from Arkansas.
Wow.
And I began to deal with God about I knew God existed. Here's the whole thing about me and God. I always knew God existed. I never questioned that. I didn't see him as love, because I thought if he was love, how could he allow all these bad things to happen? So that was the quest. And when I wrote Love Search, I had already known that God was love. So I know that God is truly love, and I know that God allows bad things to happen to us for several reasons. One, sometimes it's our choices, sometimes it's outside of our choices, but always in God's heart that he's love, because he says in his word in John 1:8 that he is love, that he is love himself, even though sometimes it doesn't look like it, does it, Paul?
When he chastens those who he loves, it doesn't feel good, does it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It does. Sometimes it doesn't feel like he loves us, but he does. He is love. And once he got that in my heart, as I began to write Love Search, I began to deal with really turning my life over to God, really trusting God and building a relationship and doing this. May I have your hand? I really wanted this with God. I really wanted to be able to know that he was real, that I could count on him, that I could trust him. And that's where I am today. I know I can really trust God. I know other people can really trust God. And so this book, Love Search, deals with how I found love, how I overcame severe anger and shame. Paul, I had such an issue with shame. And shame made me want to hide, made me want to push back, because I was so afraid that people would find out about my past. And I was already not loved, Paul, and I thought if they found out about my past, I would never be loved or accepted. So I really deal with how to overcome shame in this book too.
Shame is such a, I don't know, it's such a debilitating thing, and it really does, it harms us in great ways deeply in our psyche, in our person, because when we have shame, whether it's our fault or not, whether we were abused or whether we were taken advantage of or whether we made bad decisions, we don't feel good about it. And so it's really hard for our ego, which is really another show, but for our ego to accept that or to express ourselves in any way that's effective.
Exactly. What I found out about the spirit of shame is that it really makes you hide, and several people in the Bible dealt with shame, like Tamar, David's sister, David's daughter. When her brother raped her, it made her lock herself away. She felt so rotten and she felt so unworthy. She couldn't even come out of her home. She actually locked herself away. That's coming from shame. And so I didn't lock myself away physically. I locked myself away inside of me with my emotions and with the spirit of fear, because that fear had me gripped like this. I was just like, God, please. So God delivered me from it, and I'll tell you how he delivered me from it, Paul. So I'm in counseling with my pastor that I train with, and my pastor says, Polly, he says, there's something that happened to you that you're so ashamed of, and do you know what it is? I was like, yeah, but we're not talking about it. And so he told me about something that happened to him, Paul, and because we put degrees on everything as humans, I was like, well, you know what, God? Heck, I can talk about mine. If he can talk about what happened to him, his is so much worse than mine. So God allowed that to happen because I could see then if he could get over what happened to him, I can get over what happened to me. And so God delivered me according to his word from shame. And I made a little note on it here. It's in Isaiah 54:4, where God says that he will hide you and he will protect you and he will deliver you in Isaiah 54:4 from the spirit of shame. And that's what he's done with me. So he's delivered me from it. I no longer have a fear of being found out. And I thank God for that.
Yep. I'm a guy that's very transparent, and I've expressed a lot of things that I would be ashamed about before on the show. And I have found that to accept those things about myself, whether they're weaknesses or frailties or bad decisions, I've accepted them. And I found that by facing them, and saying, hey, you know what, I've had some shortcomings.
Right.
That's okay.
That is okay.
And it is such a peace-giving thing for me, the Bible talks about the peace that passes understanding. And I have a lot of discussions with Christian. Oh, by the way, Emily, cousin Emily, I love you. Thank you for this reference, this recommendation. But Emily and me have she's my cousin and she's my hairdresser.
Very nice.
And we always have a lot of in-depth discussions about faith and about, shame and about all these things that are very, very things that people want to talk about. And, we talked about the peace that passes understanding. And I knew that peace, but I didn't find it in the church. I found it in my wife's hospice bed when she was laying there on the verge of dying, and there was no more time, there was no more anger, there was no more outside influences, there was nothing but she and I. And I found a peace that I never knew existed in any arena. And so I really started exploring that, and I saw a lot of spirituality in that. But aside from that, I was in a hospice center where 2 people died every day. And my perception and perspectives on death changed dramatically as that experience. 7 months she was in there, and 7 months I saw people dying. And I mean, they would close the door and they'd wheel the body by. And I guess my fear of death waned. It disappeared. It wasn't there anymore. And it wasn't all of a sudden I came to a realization that it wasn't about heaven or hell. It wasn't about judgment. It was about, I'm going to live here until my heart stops beating, and then I'm not going to live here anymore.
So peace came to you.
And I received a peace because I'm going to tell you the truth. I went through a lot of struggles when my wife was going through that, because I was the faithful tither. I tithed 10% on the gross, not the net. I was very, very faithful to my church. I was faithful to my students. I taught adult Sunday school, and I was always trained, hey, if one among you is sick, pray for them, they'll be healed.
Right.
And so, you asked me about why I left the church and why I left Christianity, and that was really what kind of started me on that path. But I also was, really cognizant of the fact that peace that passes understanding is a variable term, and it really can come in different times in your life.
Exactly.
And I don't want to discredit the Bible or God or anything like that, guys. And I told you in the beginning, I'm not here to be an adversary.
Right.
But I really appreciate having dialogue, So that's kind of what I want to throw in there.
Wonderful, wonderful. And the thing about peace is that when you have peace, you don't need anything else. You don't need any answers. If you're really praying for something, like I was asking God, why did he allow my mother to suffer so much? What did she ever do so wrong that would cause her, since she was 12 years old, to suffer so much with severe epilepsy and mental illness?
Oh.
God, what? And I begged him, God, why don't you take me? This is because I didn't know how the word worked at the time. I was negotiating with him. I said, why don't you take me and let me suffer for a while and let her have rest? Because all my life, since I was 12, she was always very, very ill. She couldn't dress, she couldn't feed herself, she couldn't do any of that.
Wow.
So that's why it was difficult for me to understand that God was love, because I really couldn't see him helping me.
A lot of that burden that was there was laid on you, on your shoulders.
Right. And so, but God, he gave me a peace. And what I want to let people know today about peace, if there's a great search in your heart about something, when God gives you peace, like he says in John 14:27, he says, when I give you my peace, Polly, that peace, you don't need to know why. Because even if I told you why, Polly, I am that I am, and you wouldn't understand anyway. So when God gives you peace, you don't have a quest for anything. You just have like a settlement like you have with death now.
Exactly.
So now you're not fearful of death.
Oh, no, I welcome it. I can't wait. I mean it. People say, well, you're suicidal. No. If I was hanging on a cliff, I'd hang on with every bit of my strength.
Right.
But another show, again, I went through past life regression more than once, at least 3 times. And I was very well convinced that there was more to this than I was realizing. There was more to life. There was more to spirituality. There was more to peace. There was more to all of it. I was seeing a very limited perspective on what was limited to me by what I was trained, what I was conditioned to, and so I began to open my eyes for me. And I mean, people, I have discussions on Facebook about, atheism, and then people tell me, oh, don't let Paul fool you. He really looks happy, but he's really not. And it's like, how do you know? I'm happier than I've ever been in 65 years. I am happier than I've ever been in my life, and it's.
And what do you think what is that, Paul?
Well, I have found that I don't look externally for my peace. I don't need anything external, and I don't need any now, don't get me wrong, there's some good information in the Bible. I mean, there's especially Proverbs, but for me, that wasn't what fulfilled me. That wasn't what convinced me that here's what happened. I came across a book. It was called Journey of Souls. Journey of Souls was a past life regression, and it was 29 patients that had past life regression, and they were Christians, Buddhists, Muslims, Jewish, Catholics, every spectrum, and every one of them had a very similar, if not identical, experience, and it was like, wow, how does this line up with my faith? How can, what does this say? I mean, when I went through my first past lives regression experience, and I all of a sudden, and I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm laying here, and I'm watching all of these visuals come in front of me, and I'm saying, where is this coming from? I'm not making this up. I don't have any idea what this is. She asked me, can you name names of your siblings? And I'm naming names of my siblings, and I can see the clothes that they were wearing. I can see the shoes they had on. I could hear the dialect in their voice. I mean, it was so real. And someone says, well, that's the devil. Well, that's your perspective. So, and I'm getting off track, forgive me.
But anyway, that's how you came to a place of peace.
Actually, I started taking mushrooms because I knew that I had some problems. What happened one time on one of the sessions I went in, I met my spirit guide, and my spirit guide took me to a past life in 1725, and I was beheaded, and I could see my body, I could see myself leaving that body, and after it was over, after that experience, the regression therapist said, why did you take Paul to this life? And the answer was because Paul has had an uncontrollable rage since youth, and he always wanted to address it, but he didn't know where it was from. Now he has seen that he watched his mother be murdered, and he saw that rage build up in him. And then the frustration of not being able to avenge her death left him with even more frustration. And so it was a very deep-seated trauma that was a past life trauma for me. And so, and I know that's very hard to grasp. I mean, I remember when I used to be, a Bible study teacher, when someone would tell me something like that, I wouldn't know how to respond because it was very foreign to me and I couldn't comprehend it. But having lived it, it was really like a very liberating experience. Right.
I can tell that you're calm. You know
Thank
what I
you.
mean? So
I feel very.
I can. So, getting back to Love Search.
Yes, I'm sorry. Forgive me.
That's okay. And getting back to Love Search, God brought me to, like I said, to His Word. And I found out that God and His Word are one. So I really believe that in my heart. So I really not only believe it, but I really know it's true. And so for me, God just brought me that peace by knowing that He says in His Word in John 1:1 that Him and His Word are one. So I just chose to believe God, and I built this incredible relationship with Him. And so that's how peace comes to me.
And that's good. Please forgive me. I did not mean to diminish that in any way, because and the big reason I wanted you to come on the show is because I want to, I want my audience to know that I want to have an open mind to everybody's perspective, and it's valid.
Right, yeah. And that's the way I am too. So, God put us here for a reason for that. Because, the greatest thing that we have is love.
Yes, it is. It
and
truly
love,
is.
And when we have love the way we have, we can walk in different places with different people and have an acceptance.
Yes.
And I believe that's what's really missing. It's
So
missing
much.
in our homes. It's missing with our children because we have all these conditions with them. It's really missing in our workplaces and our churches. That love that I'm talking about, it creates acceptance, and it creates us to be able to intermingle even when we don't see everything exactly the same. We don't need to. God created us individually. That's why He created Pauline. And that's why He created Polly Sanders. And so I just love that about God, and I love that about people. And so it seems like that you came to your peace in a different way than what I did.
Yes.
Okay.
And I actually was on that path. Honestly, when I was 17 years old, I went on a path, on a journey. I was seeking something. I didn't know what it was. I know I went to a Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall. I went to a Mormon temple. I went to an apostolic faith. I went to a Baptist church. I went to a Christian church. I went to, I was 16, because it was before I joined the Army. And everyone I went to, I came out of there scratching my head saying, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it, you know. And I remember the first time I ever got involved in religion was I was in the Army. I just came back from my advanced training, and I was walking by a table, and there was an open Bible there, and I looked at it, I go, oh wow! I told my sister, I can't believe it. I didn't know you could read this. I thought it was in Latin. And so, you know, I became very studious, and I started reading it. And I mean, I have my Bible from 1979, and it's highlighted front to back, you know, top to bottom.
Right.
Since then, I've worn out a couple of Bibles. I have my latest Bible was a Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic translation Bible, and I used that very extensively. And I was very, very, again, studious, because I wanted to know God. I wanted to know, you know, He was the creator of the universe, the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega. I better know Him, you know, and so I studied His words very, very extensively.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And the whole thing about love, because God created Himself in love, that He wants us to know love. And when we really know love, it helps us to be more tolerant. It helps us to be more acceptance. And the same way when He was on the cross, I really am getting a little bit of a glimpse of that kind of love, because I have something on my desk at home that reminds me, Polly, it's easy to love when everything is perfect and going smooth.
Oh boy.
But boy, it's difficult to love when people come against you. It's difficult to love people when they don't see things the same way you do. It's difficult, but when Christ was on the cross, He died because He loved us. He loved the whole world. That's the whole thing. He just didn't love the Christian or the Jew. He didn't just love a person if you looked a certain way like we do, or you had a certain briefcase or a certain amount of money, or you lived here, or you drove this. God said that He died on the cross because of His love for us, and I love that. So this book, Love Search, again, really deals with how I found true love of God, and how that love began to shape me and mold me and help me to be more accepting with people and more tolerant, and help me to be more patient with people. And I just love that about God, how He's really working in my heart. And I believe that when we all come to know that love, it'll help us to go through life and help us to be able to be transitional with people and accepting with people. And love does this. Love opens up. Love doesn't hide and go away like this. And love doesn't put up all the guards and everything that we want to do.
Just like Corinthians says.
Yeah.
You know, it's so interesting, because in my life I've been so fortunate to be exposed to a lot of different people from a lot of different faiths, a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different traditions, races, you know, ethnicities. And I have found something that's really unique in certain people, and it's something you can't put your finger on, and it's something that isn't defined by faith. It isn't defined by religion. It isn't defined by, it's some people just have a spiritual presence about them. You're one of those people.
Thank you. I think it's love.
It is. It is. It truly is. And you know, I remember meeting a curandero, which is a medicine man. A few weeks ago, I went to a sweat lodge, and I'm reading this gentleman's book, Atek Patsin, his name. And to read his words were so reminiscent of Scripture. It was almost like this man knows love like very few people understand love. And so when you're saying this, it's like, oh, I know exactly what you mean.
Yes, yes. Well, I so thank God for really teaching me that, and I'm forever learning that, because like I said, Paul, to really be able to apply love like you've never been hurt, like you've never been so disappointed, like you've never been fulfilled in something that you really long for. That's what Love Search is about. Love Search will help you get to that place where you can find God and find that love within yourself. And when you have that love, you're so fulfilled, because you're not needing anything from the outside. You're not waiting for that man. But when the man does come along, I always tell everybody, you are very fulfilled, like your special cake. But when you put your little dribbling of your special icing on there, that's the man. But you're fulfilled from within inside. That hole God told me, Paul, he says, when I came to him, he said, Paula, you have a big hole in your heart. I was like, well, fill it. I was trying to fill it. I was trying to fill it with work. I was trying to fill it with sex. I was trying to fill it with dancing. I was a fabulous dancer, by the way.
Yeah, Emily told me.
But none of that worked because it was all outside.
Yeah.
It was all outside. It wasn't until God himself revealed his love to me and his acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized then I don't have to be like everybody else because he created me to be who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And he emerged his love inside of me. And that brought me such a fulfillment in myself, but it brought me to a place of a real tolerance and acceptance of people that they don't have to be like me either
Right.
for me to love them.
See, and that's what I think is one of the beautiful things of my discovery is that I don't try to impose my beliefs on anyone.
Right.
I don't, I give everyone has the right to have their own belief, and,
Right.
and I think that's wonderful. I think that dialogue is really important. I think that dialogue is really what makes relationships work,
I do too.
And so it's wonderful to be able to have dialogue and to communicate respectfully in a way that we, can really understand each other.
Exactly. I was going to, do I have time
Please,
to read a
you've
little
got
bit?
time. Oh,
okay.
yeah.
So, in Love Search, I'm going to read a little bit about my beginning. And it's on page 13. As far back as I can remember, Paul, I always had a lot of responsibility. I was born in the mid-1944, and I grew up as the 9th of 12 children. While people in the United States tried to balance the effect of World War II, and the children of London, England dodged German bombs. That's when I came along. I played in Arkansas cotton fields and cornfields with my friends and my 3 younger brothers. And even though I am certain that the adult in my family experiences was in the war in a much different way than what I had experienced. Before I was 10 years old, I knew that I had to help hold the family together.
Wow.
So off I went, not only doing household chores, Paul, but also working outside the home in the cotton fields. And I would pick some cotton too, Paul. I could really pick some cotton. I used to pick about 100 pounds a day.
Really?
Yeah, so I had strong work ethics even then.
Wow.
My father, and then I go on to explain about my father was 65 when I was born. My mother was 31. And then I talk about my experience with my grandmother as I go on here. And so my dad was born in 1881 in Tennessee. He was the only child of a mother and a father. And my father was married twice, once to another woman who produced 4 of my half-brothers and sisters, and then to my mother who produced 9 of those. And so my mother, she had a twin when she was born, Paul. And that twin, there was a seizure that occurred then. And that twin died from that seizure, but my mother lived. But that spirit of epilepsy kept getting greater and greater on her. And when we were born in the South in such a small little cotton field environment, that there weren't doctors around for blacks. And so we couldn't get the help for her that we wanted. And my dad tried everything to get help from her. So that's why I had all that responsibility to stay home to watch over her. My brothers went to school. My dad told me, Polly, he says, I have to keep someone home, and that has to be you, the daughter, because the boys are the ones that are going to make the living for the family. And that was what his belief was at that time, because that's the way it was.
Wow.
And so when I was 8 years old, the truant officer came by, forced me to go to school. And so then I continued that path until he died when I was 12. And then my sister Diane came from Denver, and then she took me back to Denver, and then my life began here. But you would think that's wonderful and glorious, but I was angry as hell because now I have abandonment issues.
Wow.
So now I'm abandoned because I no longer have a father, and my mother's in a mental institution, and my 3 brothers who I care for and nurture are taken from me.
Wow.
So now I start struggling with abandonment issues. So in Love Search, I deal with how God not only fill that void, but he answered a lot of my questions with peace. With his peace.
And really, that's what you need when you're in a place of turmoil. Is you need some kind of an answer.
Right.
That answer is that peace.
It is. It's definitely is.
Before I forget, guys, if you're just joining us, you are watching KUHS, the stream on Washington Court. And this is the Weekend Boost, and I'm your host, Paul Lane. Today we are talking to author and pastor,
Yes.
Polly Ann Sanders Peterson. And this is one of her books that she's written, Love Search. And we're just talking about how she really discovered peace in her life, and really how you started off with a lot of challenges in your life. You were really, like 2 steps behind the starting line. And, in a place where they couldn't even get medical care, I can understand that.
Right.
I lost a brother to epilepsy, so I can really grasp and understand what you're talking about.
And thank God today there is treatment for epilepsy. So they know what causes it, and they know how to treat it. So I'm really thankful for that. Paul, can I introduce a couple of my other books?
Please.
Okay, so once God filled me, Paul, with his presence and his love, then he had me to write about, of course I had a few addictions, Paul. I had a few addictions. I really worked very hard because I learned it as a child. I love to work today still, but I also love to have fun. So I had a gambling addiction, severe gambling addiction, and God really dealt with me about a lot of addictions. And even though he filled my heart with that void, I would get pulled down. I would be so tired from working. I would fall back into some of those addictions. And so addictions causes you to they grab you like this. That's why you can't overcome addictions, because they have you like that. Okay, and you like them. That's the other thing about addiction, people. If you have an addiction to something, you love it. So it's 2 things going on. Your emotions is tied to that addiction, and it gives you something temporary out of that. So I'm just mentioning gambling because I had a lot of addictions. But this book, Power of Perseverance, deals with how God began to show me how to really let go of addictions and all those strongholds that was holding me, that would keep pulling me back into those addictions. And I had a severe drinking problem too. So I started drinking because I was married to my son. I have one son, Brian, whom I love, and his father had a drinking problem and a drug problem. And so when we would have people over to my house, which we did, because in the 60s, 70s, 80s, what you did was you would have a card party, and everybody bring their little wine or their little beer, their little whatever, and you'd all put it together, and you put your little chips and salsa together with it, and that's how you had a party. You had your great music on. And so that's, Paul, how I got into drinking. And I began to use alcohol as a crush. So when I would crash, and how I would fall back from tremendous hurts and not being fulfilled inside still, it would cause me to fall into addictions, and that alcohol was one of them. So God began to deal with me about drinking and why drinking was bad for me. And so anyway, in this book, Power of Perseverance, Paul, it will help everyone to know how to go get help, some practical things as well with spiritual things, how to overcome addictions.
Polly, where can people find your books?
Several places. They can find it on Amazon like yours.
Get that? Amazon?
Amazon. They can also find it on my website, Paul, which is Covenant House of Love Ministries. Covenant House of Love Ministries. And so once God began to heal me from addictions, and I just want everybody to know, when you have an addiction, it's an ongoing struggle. Even when God heals you from it, you always have a tendency, because there's darkness out there, and that spirit will always pull you back into that.
Still flesh. You're still flesh.
Still flesh. Still flesh until we go to heaven. So, and just because I'm a pastor, it doesn't change either. I just want people to know that.
I'm going to ask you something. I used to go to a very, very Orthodox church for a long time. And some of the elders would talk about when I was a sinner. And I never addressed it because I didn't have the guts to. But I always would think to myself, what do you mean? You're still according to the Bible, you're still a sinner.
Right. It's true. It's true.
And so for me, I had to really struggle with that comment.
I don't know why we do that, but I just want everybody to know, just because everybody has a place where God calls you and He gives you a gift. Mine is to share love, because He filled me with love. So the gift He gave me is love, so He wants me to give love back out. He gave me a heart for people, to serve people, to love people, and so that's why He made me a pastor. He just gave me a pastoral heart. I'm actually an outreach pastor, and I work with abused women like myself. We're in the prison system, and we work with small groups. We do counseling and teaching. And right now, Paul, we're doing a 6-week group on Zoom where we're working and helping people, women, to overcome the spirit of fear. And we talk about what the spirit of fear does to you, how it traumatizes you, and how it wants to hold you back.
Oh, man.
And so that's the kind of work that God has me to do, and I just love it.
That's powerful. That's a wonderful place to be.
Yeah, so I love giving back. I don't earn any money from it. And there's nothing wrong with earning money from that. I just want to make that clear. But for me, I'm doing it because it's a passion. Because God helped me, so I help other people. And I earn money through my business that God gave me as a hairdresser.
Wonderful.
So that's how it works. So that was the second one, Paul. The third one with him, Paul, deals with how God began to build a relationship with me, a true relationship, Paul, where I could talk to Him about everything. I talk to God about everything, Paul. There's nothing I can't talk to Him about. And so that's the kind of relationship that I built with Him, a one-on-one. So this book deals with who God is, how to really know who He is, and how to build a personal relationship with Him. And Paul, my last book is a workbook. So we took those 3 workbooks, Paul, and we put them into a workbook where everybody could, if you're in my group or you're in another group, you can use this as a tool, Paul. And so it talks about finding God, finding love, overcoming rejection, overcoming shame, overcoming unforgiveness, how to build a prayer life. So that's what this book deals with. What I call stables. Like on a plate you got your meat, your vegetables, and your starch. This book is like a stable. So it's like a stable. And so we use this to teach in the prison systems, in our groups. It's a great tool for people that want to have a good solid manual to be able to teach and work with other people. And we work specifically, not that we don't love men, we do. I'm married to a wonderful guy, you met him this morning.
Yes.
But this, we deal with women because God's given us a heart for women, for abused women.
You are talking my language. I'm a feminist.
Okay.
I am sick and tired of the male ego. I think 90% of the problems of this world are based on the male ego. And that's my opinion. That's not an official statement, but it's my opinion, and I have a lot of information to back it up. And so, I believe that women really are the givers of life, and women really do need to be respected. And, I talk about this on the show. Women own over 10.9 million homes in America. Men only own 8.25 million homes in America. And women only make 84 cents to the dollar.
Okay.
So what is that saying? Men, wake up. Pull your head out. It's not that complicated. And, respecting women, there's a new thing going out on social media, and it's talking about, if your daughter was in the forest, would you rather be out there with a bear or a man? And everyone's saying with the bear, because men are so despicable.
Right.
And so I really appreciate that. What you're doing is really supporting the women. That's really wonderful.
Well, and it's my purpose. It's what God has given me. So I think you have to stay true to where God wants you, because just like you're called to sector of people that I'll never meet, the church is called to a sector of people that maybe I won't meet them, or they won't meet the people that I meet. They won't meet the people in prison usually that I meet. You see what I mean? So God gives each person a purpose and a roadmap to be able to touch different people. When He said go into all the world, we all can't go in the world, but we all can find a way to serve people and leave something loving when we leave the earth.
Yep.
That's my whole thing. Leave something better than what you found it.
Your last book has the word healing in it.
Yes.
And I want to talk briefly about healing, because I've recently learned that there's a difference between curing someone and healing someone.
Right.
healed and at peace.
Mhm.
And so many others go to their graves cured and in misery.
Right.
And so healing it's a very broad term, and yet it's very, very all-encompassing. And what it is healing is peace.
Mhm.
Healing is really, shedding a lot of the things that have held you back, a lot of the burdens, a lot of the bad habits, addictions, whatever you want
Right.
to call them. And it's really taking a look at them from an outside perspective and saying, you know what, these don't serve me.
Mhm.
And and it's really important that people do understand that healing is a lifelong journey. It's a
It is.
pathway and it's also something we have a responsibility to share with other people.
Exactly. And so we called it inner healing because that's exactly what it is. Remember I said that God showed me that there was a big void in my heart?
Yes.
And then he came in himself and filled it with his love,
Mm-hmm.
his liquid love. And so healing is a process, and everything that we teach in here, it's ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
Not that when God does something, he does do it permanently, but also our circumstances and situations and our known patterns can pull us back into that. And it also says in the scripture in Matthew that even though God cleanses our house or he removes an addiction, he heals you, because people will say, well, Polly, Pastor Polly, God healed me from cancer, but I noticed that cancer is back. How could that be?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you need to go to God and ask God that, because there could be several things could be going on. One, definitely I believe when God heals you, he heals you because he heals physically while we're on the earth, and he heals permanently when we're with him.
Truly.
And he heals, and I have it right here, he heals spiritually, mentally, and emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
He also can heal financially. He can heal you in your relationships. And healing is such a broad term, like what you said.
Mhm.
But I love the word healing because I believe that doctors can heal. I have great doctors.
Mhm.
And I believe that God is the healer.
Mhm.
So when I'm sick, like I broke my ankle a year and a half ago, I had great care at our city hospital.
Mhm.
But I also prayed. I said, God, restore my legs so that I can work again. So God, through great doctors, did restore that.
Mhm.
And so I do have some swelling occasionally. That's that ongoing healing,
Mhm.
ongoing healing.
Mhm.
And it's the same way in our hearts. It's the same way in our emotions. It's the same way in our relationships. God can heal a marriage, but it doesn't mean that you don't continually have to work at it.
Yep.
Hello.
There's still everyday work that has to be done. Yeah.
Yes, it does.
I have to say that I love that when someone comes in my house, even if they've never been there before, they always say, "Oh, it feels so good in here," and that's the love
That's the love.
has to be in a house, and that's coming from our hearts,
Right.
And it's a wonderful thing to be able to feel that, regardless of your faith, to be able to feel that love that emanates. It doesn't just radiate; it emanates. I mean, it literally goes through walls. I mean, it precedes you when you walk into a room. People say, "Man, there's something special about her," or "There's
Yeah.
something, I don't know what it is," but it's like that's what that love is.
Love is so powerful. Love really can do things for me that I can't do for myself. I've seen it. Like, I'm very strong-willed, and I have this smile, but I'm a very forceful, strong person because I had to be.
Mhm.
And so, but I can kind of stand man to man with a guy, like with my husband. But I found all that does is just bring on war, and it brings distance. And I found when I back up, allow the love of God in my heart to teach me how to love him, how to respect him, how to honor him, how to surrender to him at times, that it's going to bring healing and it's going to bring the peace that I need.
Mhm.
And so that love is so powerful when we allow God to teach us how to allow love to manifest in us in those circumstances and situations. And it's I told someone yesterday in the salon, I said, how can we pray for peace outside of our country for all the things that's going on? We don't even have peace in our hearts or peace in our homes
Mhm.
or peace in our relationships. I said, let's start there first. Let's ask God to show us how to experience his love in a way that we've never experienced it. And God gave me a word over National Prayer Day on May 2nd. We were praying as a nation. And God told me, he says, Polly, I'm getting ready to loose my love in a way that you haven't experienced it before. You means all of us. And so I'm just looking forward to, like you have experienced, real love, tangible love. The love that's giving, the love that's forgiving, the love that's more accepting, the love that's be able to embrace indifferences.
Oh,
that kind of love is what God is getting ready to release, and that's the kind of love that He is.
I believe that we are on the verge of a great awakening in this country. I mean, in fact, it's happening right now, today.
Yes.
I don't know if you heard about the solar sunspots that are took place yesterday.
Yes, I did.
Very, very severe. I mean, it's happening right now, this minute, and they're saying that this could change the entire world. This could literally knock us back to the Stone Age, because it could knock, if we had an EMP, or electromagnetic pulse, it could literally wipe out everything. And what my wife and I talked about last night was, okay, if this happens, where do we fit in? And what we have is we have each other.
Right.
We have our love for each other.
Right.
And we have the ability to help other people.
If we really have love.
We have love, exactly. And if
If
you
we
all
really
put it all
have
down,
love, right?
it's love.
If we really have love, we would care about each other.
Oh man.
If we really had love, we would be more tolerant and more accepting. If we really operated in true love, we wouldn't put all of these bars up and boundaries up. We would be more tolerant and more accepting with people and indifferences if we really knew love. The kind of love that God wants us to experience is that kind of love. Because remember, when He was on the cross again, He loved for the whole world. And there's so many differences and so ways of finding God. And so the whole thing about that is God doesn't make it just rigid for people. God wants you to desire Him in His heart, in your heart. That's how He made us, to be able to want to find Him and desire Him and have a real relation, tangible. Not that's wrong with His Word. We love His Word because Him and His Word is one. But it doesn't do any good to read His Word if you don't move in love.
There is so much conflict in that going on right now. I mean, we have 600 or over 600 variations of Christianity, and every one of them says everyone else is going to hell.
Right.
And so, the very essence of this faith has been so fragmented that there's so much division in it that someone from one faith will literally kill someone from another faith, and they're both Christian,
Right.
and
And
it's
think
like,
they're doing it in the name of God.
in the name of God. And so
Right.
what you're saying has so much merit, and it's so true about love. Has to be all-encompassing. It has to be unconditional. It has
Yes,
to be
that's what you're
without limits, and
That's exactly true. Yeah, and I'm just learning a fraction of that because I really get a chance to apply it in my own home, because my husband and I are so different. Matter of fact, when we got married, the pastor said to us, "We're not in agreement for putting you two together because you two are so different." And it's true, we are so different. So we had to really practice love in our own house in a huge way.
Wow.
Because you hear what I'm saying, Paul?
Oh, yeah.
We're so different. It's like I'm black and he's white. Of course he's black because you saw him, but it's like I'm married to a whole different person than what I am. And my ways aren't any better than his ways. So we had to really allow God to come in and love us first, teach us love and acceptance, and then to be able to love and accept each other. So it all started with me applying my love in my own household, because we are so different. We're different how we see God. We're different in how we both love God, but it's different how we see God. It's different. We're really different politically. We might be somewhere similar financially, like what we want to do with our money and so forth. We both love our family, but he doesn't have to have a lot of family around him, and I love having my family over all the time. So I'm just setting the stage there for people to see that love had to come in and do this to us. It had to do this to us. And it took time. And it took my heart willing to want to learn God's ways in that and to be able to apply it. And I had to be willing. I had to take my will from the things that I knew, Paul, and to be able to be willing to trust this love that God was showing me that worked. And it works. It works. Today we have peace in our home. Today we are closer than we've ever been. And I'm just so thankful for that, and I believe that's because of the love of God that's working in us.
That's awesome. I mean, that really is, when you have something that's fulfilling you, Guys, I mean, people on Facebook know that. I mean, when I see someone who's struggling with a spiritual thing, I'll give them a verse of scripture, you know, because I mean, I may not follow that, but that doesn't mean I hate it. It doesn't
Right.
mean that I'm an enemy of it, you know.
Right.
And I had a friend who was talking about why can't family just be show gratitude? And I said, you know what? Jesus healed 10 lepers. How many came back to say thanks?
That's
Only
right.
one. Expect ingratitude.
Right.
You know, and it's one of the Dale Carnegie principles. But you know, I really feel like you know, as part of my journey is not to trip up anyone else. You know, my job is to give as much love as I can. You know, and if someone wants to find out more about what I believe, I'm happy to share that. But I'm not here to impose my you know, my beliefs. Although I feel very strongly about them. I feel like love is really all-encompassing. It really is, and it's something that transcends religion. It transcends books. It transcends this studio.
Right.
Love is something that can't be contained and it can't be defined. You
Right.
know?
I would say, like God says, at the end, when we come to the end, God says, when someone comes before him, he's going to say, get away from me because I
Never
don't know
knew
you. I don't know you. And I thought, well, how could that be, God, when they said they did miracles,
In your
they
name.
did this, they did this in your name. But the key thing is they didn't know love.
Yeah. See, I didn't want to have that fear. I didn't want to fear that. I mean, so many people follow the Bible because they're afraid of the other option. And I'm sorry, but if you follow the Bible because you're afraid of hell, then you're not following the Bible for the right reasons. Sorry, guys, that's a fact.
Yeah, you want to follow it because it's love.
Yeah.
Because it's tangible, liquid love. And there's no greater love than God himself. And I love the Word because the Word and God are one, like he says in John 1:1. And I love the Word because when you have the Word, it does this for you. It gives you reinforcement. It's like giving you God because they're one. So for me, it's hard for me. I can't separate God from the Word or the Word from God because he said in the beginning was the Word. And so I'm so thankful that I have that in my heart. And I believe from my own experience walking with God is that you can really count on the Word. Because God says in Isaiah 55:11 that we have the authority to send his Word. And when we're sending his Word, we're sending him himself. We're sending liquid love to the situation. And it doesn't mean that it's going to work out the way we think it's going to work out. But it means that God's love knows the right way to finish that. And I know you have some testimonies about that, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I've been around a few times, and like I said, I've done a lot of research and I've done a lot of searching and I've done a lot of questioning and I've done a lot of seeking, and so I feel like I'm in a really good place in my life, and I feel very much engulfed in love. I mean, in my relationship with my wife, I mean, when we go to bed, before I had this experience, we would go to bed and I had an apartment downstairs and you could hear us screaming every night. And now you hear us roaring, but laughter. Every night. And it's like, I pinch myself because it's like, I never had this much harmony. I never had this much peace. I never had this much just happiness in my life. And it's like, oh man, I really, for me, it serves me very well, and so, for those of you who are Christian, rock on, man. I completely support you. I'm not here to try to, again, to conflict. My journey is a little different, and we all have our paths, and we need to enjoy our path as much as we can, and we need to find fulfillment in that path. And if we have shortcomings or if we feel like something's missing, then we got to go continue searching.
Right, that's true. And God says, draw to him and he would draw to us. So I would encourage everyone to ask God to reveal himself in a way that it's him. Yes.
Guys, we are about out of time. It went fast. Polly, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I said in the beginning, everybody is searching for a hero, and if you can't find one, be one. One of the things I love best about my job here is that I get to talk to heroes. I get to talk to people who are really changing the world, who are really caring about other people, and who are really showing love in a way that people need to feel and see and have in their lives. And so thank you so much.
Thank you. I loved it.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. I loved it. Thank you
Yes.
for having me.
Guys, stay tuned. Mr. International, Paul Chavez, is coming on with deep cuts, and he's here to light up your day, guys.
Let's do this.
Thank you so much for your time. See you next time.